sure what the requirements are on the AMD processor, and it has to have a certain
Ryzen second.
It has to be Ryzen. So you already looked at this, and you also have to have 8 gigs of RAM. So there are ways around it. Microsoft actually has told you how to get around it. They have a registry hack.
Right.
Have you tried that?
Yeah, no, I can install it. In fact, I have installed it in an unsupported state.
Yeah.
I would very much like to get the TPM functionality working on this board.
Oh, I see. Okay. You've looked in BIOS, because a lot of times it comes with TPM, but it's not enabled. You've looked in BIOS?
Right, that's where I'm at, is in the BIOS, and I think they gave you some instructions about installing Windows 8, enabling BitLock. No, you don't understand. The TPM is not. The BIOS is stopping it.
Keith512 in the chat room is saying on AMD they call it FTPM.
A newer one.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this system's too old for that.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I
spelled it.
So tell me again, not for my benefit, but for the benefit of anybody listening who might have a solution for you. Which AMD processor is it? You said a Zen?
No, it's an FM2, specifically an AMD A105700. It's an older one.
Okay. So that's and who does the motherboard?
Gigabyte.
And it's a Gigabyte motherboard. So if anybody listening has figured out how to turn it on TPM2 with a 815700 on a Gigabyte motherboard, this is the place to call, or join us in the chat room or something like that. That obviously, Alan, I have no idea. It's not in my database of fixes, so I don't really know. If you can't turn it on in the BIOS, TPM, Intel's trusted platform module, is a security thing that when it first came out, there were some qualms about it.
I didn't actually start.
But it's kind of like the Secure Enclave on your iPhone or your Samsung device. It's a hardware security chip that is good for security. And sometimes it's in software, not hardware. And I think that's the case with this processor. Sam Abul Samad, Car Guy, next. Oh, I shouldn't sing. Sorry. Right here, the most annoying sound in the world. It's me, Leo Laporte, the tech guy. 8888 Ask Leo, the phone number. We're going to take a little break from calls momentarily, as we always do at this time, for Sam Abul Samad, our car guy. He's an expert in the technology of vehicles, principal researcher at Guidehouse Insights, podcaster at wheelbearings.media. Hello, Sam.
Hello, Leo. How are you today?
I am well. What's up in the world of cars?
Well, I took the Miata out for the first drive of the year yesterday. It's temperatures up into the 55 yesterday and 60 today.
Did you throw out the roof so you can't take it out unless it's warm?
Short?
I didn't throw it out, but I never put it out. The only time I ever put up the top on my car is when I'm washing it. That's it.
Is it a rag top?
Yeah. So
really, it's not a roof. It's a roof in name only.
Well, no, it's a roof. I mean, it'll keep out the rain. So if it starts raining while I'm driving, it'll keep me dry.
Yeah.
It keeps the water out when I'm washing the car, but the rest of the time it stays down because it's a convertible. It's supposed to be driven with the top down. If you're not going to drive, if you have a convertible and you don't put the top down, why did you buy a convertible?
That's a good question.
Because almost all convertibles look worse with the top up than they do with the top down.
Yeah.
But just leave the top down. If you don't want your hair messed up, don't buy a convertible.
Sam, it seems you have strong feelings on this matter.
I have an opinion or two on this. I see people driving around in convertibles with the top up on beautiful days like today, and I wonder why did you bother? But speaking of convertibles,
yes,
this week Polestar, which is it started off as a company in the mid '90s developing race cars based on Volvos for touring car racing.
That explains the name Polestar, a star of the pole position.
Well, actually, it's more about the pole
the
star,
North Star.
The North Star. Yeah.
Hey, I was trying to be clever.
Sweden.
Yeah.
But at any rate, They started off, and then they got into building high performance road cars for Volvo. Volvo eventually bought Polestar. Then Volvo got bought by Geely, the Chinese manufacturer, and then they decided, oh, we're gonna make Polestar a dedicated EV brand, and so they set it up, sort of spinning it out again. And
sucked.
they launched their first cars a couple years ago, the Polestar 1, which is actually a plug-in
All right,
hybrid
so that
coupe,
looks like
high
absolute
performance, and then the
shit.
Polestar 2, which is available now that you can buy as a sedan. And
I can't see
they've got
shit
more
on the
models
screen.
coming out. But they showed a new concept this week called the Polestar
Ray.
O2, as in oxygen. And it's a convertible. It's a roadster, and it's quite a stunning looking roadster, I think. And they haven't said yet if they're going to build this, but it's based on the same a new platform that they've been developing. It's a bonded aluminum platform that they're going to use for their upcoming Polestar 5.
It's interesting. We for years cars were made of steel, but people are trying different materials. I guess because for weight reasons.
Yeah, aluminum is considerably lighter than steel.
Yeah.
And depending on how you put it together, it can be just as strong. I mean, as an example, Ford has been building F-150s out of aluminum since 2015, and they're plenty strong. It's not an issue. And what's interesting, one of the interesting things about this vehicle and this new platform that Polestar is developing, Polestar is based in Sweden, but they established a new R&D facility in the UK, and they hired a bunch of people from companies like Lotus. Lotus, the sports car maker, back in the 90s, they developed, when they were developing the Elise, which eventually became the basis of the original first generation Tesla Roadster, they wanted to make the Elise really lightweight and make it out of aluminum. And they had to figure out ways to build this thing.
What about safety? I mean, steel, is strong. I don't want to drive around in a tin can.
Aluminum can be plenty strong as well.
Oh, good. Okay.
It can be just as strong as steel.
Hence the bonded aluminum, like plywood. Yeah.
Right. So what they generally with steel vehicles, they're most of the parts are welded together or bolted together.
Right.
But in order to get one of the things they wanted to do with the Elise, and that they're doing with the new Polestar platforms, they wanted to use extrusions. So an extrusion is when you take metal and you heat it up till it's almost like a paste. It's not quite liquid, but pliable. And then you force it through a die. So it's kind of like when you squeeze your tube of toothpaste.
Yeah.
You're extruding the toothpaste out of the end of the tube.
Didn't Elon do that with some Teslas? Sounds familiar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he got the technology from Lotus.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
A bunch of Lotus engineers have worked at Tesla.
Not coming up short.
And so Tesla originally developed this using extrusions, and they were trying to figure out, okay, how can we join these parts together? And they actually they worked with some companies that build adhesives, and they developed some structural adhesives to glue these parts together.
Okay. Now, I'm sure it's very strong, but it does make people nervous when you say you're driving an aluminum car that's been glued together. I mean, there's kind of that sounds like not so good. It sounds like it's maybe made out of chewing gum wrappers.
Yeah, no. These adhesives that they've developed for joining these aluminum components, so they've got a mix of castings, extrusions, some stampings, and to join it all together, they developed these industrial adhesives that are incredibly strong. It's stronger than welds.
Oh, interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so this is the kind of technology that they're using. A number of other manufacturers have adopted it. You mentioned Lotus or Tesla. Tesla has used it in the Model S and the Model X. And of course,
so I was driving a chewing gum wrapper vehicle. I just didn't know.
You were, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
And the
it's interesting.
This was based on the same architecture.
That is one thing I noticed. It feels like the hoods and the the fenders and stuff on on my Model X seemed thin. It felt like I could dent them by punching them, and I guess that's because they were thin.
Yeah, if you tap on them, they'll feel like they're thinner, but they're typically actually thicker than steel panels because aluminum itself, at the same thickness, aluminum is not as strong as steel, but you can get the same strength by using a thicker gauge of aluminum, and it'll still be lighter. So it can still be about 30% lighter than a comparable steel part. And so
And of course, weight's huge with electric vehicles.
It's really
a big
important with electric
weight
vehicles
and
because
aerodynamics.
batteries are heavy,
Yeah.
and the more mass you have to move, the more energy it takes to move that. So it's going to affect your range and your performance. And as a prime example, we talked recently about the Hummer EV, and the battery pack in the Hummer EV weighs 2,932 pounds.
It's more than a Honda.
Which is about the same as the Honda Civic that's parked in my garage, and about half again as much as my Miata. So using aluminum is great. I mean, aluminum is a little more expensive to use than steel, but you make up for it in other ways by reducing the mass. You make the vehicle more efficient. Aluminum is also very easily recyclable. Steel is easily recyclable as well, but it's really easy to take the scrap, when you're machining it and cutting off parts, taking all the scrap parts, melt them back down again, make more parts out of it. So you have very little waste with aluminum. And so this Polestar 02 concept, like the upcoming Polestar 5, uses a bonded aluminum chassis that should be really, really strong, very lightweight, and should help the performance compared to building the same thing out of steel or some other material.
Is this the one behind you? Is the one with the drone in the back?
This is the one with the drone in the back. So the production version, if they build it, probably won't have a drone in the back. But this one has a drone that you can pop up, and it'll follow along. It's paired to the car.
It's the first car with a selfie cam, and I think it's very appropriate for this modern world.
Absolutely.
See me driving
What could possibly
around.
go wrong?
Sam Bull Salmon, principal researcher, Will Bearings.media is his podcast, principal researcher at Guidehouse Insights, and always a pleasure to have you on. And I'm glad you were able to drive your rag top around town because it's warming up. Spring is sprung. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you, Leo.
Leo Laporte, the tech guy. More calls right after this. Okay, let me put the clock in the window. And it is all yours, my friend. Assuming you would like to stick around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
All right. So let's see. Mike Heiss asked about carbon fiber. He said that he had a BMW i3, and this also applies to the i8, both of which are now discontinued. They both had carbon fiber structures, and there are other very high performance vehicles that also use carbon fiber because it's very lightweight, it's lighter even than aluminum, stronger than steel, but it's also very expensive. And he said that in the i3 it worked great when it got hit, but the repair cost to fix it where it fractured between the carbon and aluminum meant that it was totaled. And this is a challenge. One of the things that manufacturers are trying to do is use mixed materials, because different materials have different properties, and so what they try to do is they're using the materials that give them the best blend of properties at each part of the vehicle. So where they need real structural integrity, like for the passenger compartment, to keep from anything intruding on the passenger compartment when you get into a crash, they want something really strong. BMW decided to try carbon fiber on the i3 and the i8, and that worked really well. Others use ultra high strength steels in certain areas, and then they'll use lower strength steels or other materials in areas where they want it to actually be able to collapse, to absorb some of the energy of a crash. So for things like frame rails at the front and rear of the vehicle, where you actually want the material to compress and take up some of that energy so it's not all transferred into the passenger compartment, they'll use milder steels. The problem is joining different materials. That's always a challenge. And in the case of the BMWs, it was a challenge, because obviously they couldn't make the whole thing out of carbon fiber. They had metal structures where the suspension was attached, and if the carbon fiber fractures, then repairing that and joining those different parts together can be a real challenge. It can be very problematic. Another problem is if you're using a mix of steel and aluminum. One, because one of the challenges you have is if you ever take two different metals, take steel and aluminum, or steel and copper, or copper and aluminum, and you just put them together, just side by side, and just let it sit, so they're touching, you'll get something called galvanic corrosion. So you'll actually get corrosion between those parts, and so one of the things they have to do is when they're joining dissimilar metals, they have to actually put an insulator in between them so they're not in physical contact. Acura on the NSX, one of the things that they did is they actually used the adhesives for joining some different components, and they would have the bead of adhesive between an aluminum part and a steel part, joining those two together, but it also prevented the aluminum and steel from touching each other, so they didn't get that corrosion there. So there's some very creative solutions that they're coming up with, but I'll talk about that some more in the next segment.
Thank you, Mr. Sam Abu Sabid. You want to stick around for the top of the hour? It's good.
Sure thing.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Leo Laporte, the tech guy. Ooh.
No,
Mm-mm.
that way.
8888 Ask Leo. That's the phone number. Mark's on the line from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Hello, Mark.
Hi, Leo. It's good to talk to you again, my friend.
Nice to hear from you.
Hey, I just have a very simple question, and I'm sure you'll be able to answer it very easily, but if not, Sam's going to be around, so he might help.
Sam's right here. He's right in the, he's just over my shoulder. So go ahead.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, ICE vehicles are so mature these days, and EVs are starting their maturation climb up the scale.
Yes.
But they're looking pretty good right now.
ICE is internal combustion engines. EVs are short for battery electric vehicles, or BEVs. So go ahead with your question. I just wanted to define terms so people know what you're talking about.
I understand
yeah.
completely. Well, what's the point of a hybrid anymore?
Oh, that's a good question. So hybrids have little tiny gasoline engines in there and batteries. There's plug-in hybrids that run off the battery, and then there's hybrids that kind of switch back and forth between the ICE and the EV portion. I'm going to say, because there are people, still quite a few of them, who have range anxiety. They're afraid they're going to run out of juice before they find a charger, and so it makes them feel a little better to have a little tiny gas tank, a little tiny gas engine, so they know they can keep going. Sam, you agree? You think that's the main?
Yeah, and it's for different use cases. There's no silver bullet solution yet for that meets everybody's needs. And for some people, as you say, whether they may have range anxiety, or depending on where you live, what type of vehicle you need, a hybrid might be a better solution for you right now than a battery electric vehicle. Certainly, hybrids have become a lot more affordable over the years. Battery electric vehicles are still more expensive, but the cheapest EV you can buy right now, is going to cost you at a minimum about $30,000 before.
Because you need bigger batteries.
You need bigger batteries.
Yeah,
Batteries are still expensive. Whereas, with a hybrid, the Ford Maverick is an example that launched last fall. It's their compact pickup truck. It's available. It's the standard powertrain, and there's a hybrid powertrain. It gets 40 miles per gallon, and it starts at $20,000. So it's a very affordable vehicle. So hybrids might be a better solution, especially if you live somewhere rural where charging might be a problem. Then a hybrid might be a better answer for you right now.
Yeah. It's, gas prices. What's gas like, Mark, where you are now?
They say it's going to be over $4 a gallon soon, right? Sam, is that what you're hearing about Michigan? Because I'm in Grand Rapids.
Yeah, most likely. I
Get ready for this.
Next week or two, we'll probably hit $4.
Here in California, it's $5.99 for premium, and there are places in LA it's $6.99. So get ready for $7 gas, and I think that's going to help. My wife and I are driving by the gas stations. It's at $5.99 a gallon, and we're going, "Whoo, let's go home and charge."
She's probably happy that the Mini got fixed, and she was able to keep
keeping the Mini
instead of going back to a gas car.
Yeah.
Leo, you had that comment about range anxiety. Is there one good source for finding out exactly where all the chargers are in the country?
Yes, there is. If you go, the Department of Energy actually has a website called the Alternative Fuels Data Center. It's at afdc dot energy or .doe.gov, I think.
That sounds right. Yeah.
.gov.
No,
And
I'll
what you
find
can
it.
do on there, let's see.
That's all right. I'll
What you
find
can
it.
do on there is you can search. Let's see. Oh, here it is. afdc.energy.gov. Yeah, there we
Okay.
go. And there's a tab at the top. You can locate stations, and if you click on that, you can filter. You can go in the filters, and you can select if you're looking for for electric charging stations. Tap on fuel, select electric. You can also find biodiesel, compressed CNG, compressed natural gas, ethanol, hydrogen, etc. But if you click on fuel and select electric, you can then find a map of all of the public charging stations across actually Canada and the U.S.
But all the electric vehicles I've driven have in their nav systems that information as well. How up to date it is, I don't know. But I think in most cases, because they're getting it from the internet,
tends to be
it's up to date.
Yeah, it tends to be pretty up to date. And also, Google Maps also has EV charging
Right.
information. I think
So when we're
Apple's also started to put that
When
in.
we're driving, my car will say, "Hey, you're gonna if you put in where you're going." They say you're gonna have to stop, and here's some places you can stop, and here's how long it's gonna take you to charge. That's the biggest because there are so many charging stations coming in now, thanks to Electrify America, thanks to the federal government. That's becoming less of a problem. The biggest issue is how long it takes to charge. It's not like a gas station. You whip in, 5 minutes later, you're ready to go. You've got to.
But even
spend
that's
time.
becoming less of a problem now. We're getting higher power charging stations and vehicles, EVs that support faster charging rates. Teslas will charge it up to 250 kilowatts now, at least until they get to 50% charge, and then they taper off.
Yeah.
The new Hyundai Ioniq 5 and Kia EV6 will charge at 232 kilowatts, so you can get from 10 to 80% charge in 18 minutes. So you can put a lot of energy into a vehicle pretty quickly now.
Yeah. And in case you're wondering, gas in the UK is about, according to the chat room, $9 a gallon. So I guess I won't feel so bad about our $6 a gallon. A friend's son, Mike Elgin's son, has a Toyota Mirai, which is their hydrogen vehicle. Now, talk about range anxiety. He's lucky because he lives around the corner from a hydrogen filling station. But, he can't drive up here because there's nowhere to fill up.
Right.
Yeah,
There's a hydrogen station in
Napa
in
or
Marin.
something. Or Marin.
No,
okay.
in Marin,
Yeah.
just off the 101.
Yeah.
I forget.
That's one, though, before you go somewhere, you really check
Yeah.
to see where am I going to get more hydrogen. I think that may be an alternative fuel that doesn't have much of a future. I'm just saying.
Yeah, there's
electric's
53
good.
hydrogen stations available right
Yeah,
now.
in the country, 53.
Yeah.
Okay. How many electric chargers?
There are 53,000
There you go.
charging station locations with 130,000 charging points.
So there's 1,000 times more electric chargers than our hydrogen chargers. Yeah, and that number is going up all the time. There is that issue if you have a Tesla, you have to use a Tesla. You can use any charger for a Tesla, but
Yeah,
we
Teslas
can't
come with
use
an adapter.
Tesla's chargers. Although Elon says he might start opening up his chargers to non-Tesla vehicles. And then the cost of the charging can be pretty high depending on the cost of electricity. Out here in California, it's very close to the cost of gasoline if you're charging at a remote charger. My cost at home is not, and so I fill up at home in effect. Do you have a gas vehicle, Mark? Or are you thinking about or electric vehicle rather? Are you thinking about one? Or?
No, we've still got gas vehicles. It's just something that crossed my mind the other day. It's like I don't understand hybrids, why people need them. But I think the answer eventually came down to the same as all answers of unanswered questions: money.
Money, honey.
Yeah.
Hey, Mark, pleasure talking to you.
For
Thank
the
you.
right job.
Thank you for calling. It's nice when we can get a car question for the car guy. I say I have a friend here. Sam is in the house from Ypsilanti, Michigan. Thank you, Sam, and thank you, Mark. 8888. You don't have to ask car questions when Sam's here, but it's nice if you. 8888. Ask Leo the phone number. techguylabs.com, the website. I'm a big fan of electric vehicles. I mean, there are people who say, oh, the electricity's not clean that you're using. It is in my case because we have a lot of solar panels. Or they say, the materials that you need to make these lithium-ion batteries are not good, like things like, what is it, cobalt. But there was just a recent study that showed that, in fact, even with long-term considering manufacturing, EVs are much better than gas vehicles for the environment. Leo Laporte,
What the
the
fuck?
tech guy. Yeah, unless you're driving the Beast. If you're driving the Beast, you're gonna have to have some gas. Okay, Sam, you are on if you wish to be for
Sure.
about 9 minutes. Don't pay no attention to that clock. That's
Okay.
gonna shift over to 8:30, and so you have about 9 minutes.
All right. So yeah, to what you just mentioned about that study, that was a new study out of the University of Michigan at Ford, looking at the environmental impact of EVs, and it provided roughly the same results we've seen from a number of earlier studies. That it does take more energy to manufacture an EV, primarily because of the battery, but it uses so much less energy over its lifespan that when you look at the total life cycle, the so-called cradle to grave
Wait a minute.
energy
The fuck?
use and emissions, it's significantly less. The only time when it
Fuck it. I don't
is
care.
slightly more still is
I
if
didn't
you're
mean to take
using
a drop there.
exclusively coal power
Right.
for the electricity.
Right.
But any other source of electricity, if it's natural gas or hydro or any of the other renewable sources, then you're going to use significantly less energy over the life of the vehicle, and that's actually only going to get better as we get more EVs on the road and those EVs reach end of life and we start recycling those batteries. Battery
care.
recycling is an area that's going to grow substantially over the next decade. We haven't done much of it up till now because there simply haven't been enough batteries to make it viable, to make it economically useful. But earlier this week, Stellantis had an investor day, and one of the things their CEO Carlos Tavares talked about was previously last year they announced that Stellantis was going to build 200 battery production facilities with a capacity of 260 gigawatt hours a year. They've now bumped that up to 400 gigawatt hours a year by 2030 because the expectations are going to need so many more batteries, so many more EVs that in order to support all of that, you're going to need a lot more of the key active materials, the nickel, cobalt, manganese, the lithium, and obviously you can extract that from the ground, but it's a lot better if you can reuse a lot of those materials. And even a battery that's reached the end of life where it still doesn't have it doesn't have enough capacity to be useful in a vehicle, it still has those materials can still be extracted from it and fed back into the production process and make new batteries that are just as good as the ones made from the virgin materials. So you're going to see a huge growth in recycling over the next 5 to 10 years as we start to get more volume of batteries available to recycle. One of the companies leading in that space is a company called Redwood Materials, which was founded, and their CEO is J.B. Straubel, who was the former CTO of Tesla. And there's a number of other companies like Li-Cycle and manufacturers are also doing this. Volkswagen has a pilot recycling facility in Germany already where they're doing this stuff. So you're going to see a lot of those materials recycled there. Getting on to some of the other topics that people were asking about here in the chat. Let's see. Buzzy had said he got a warning light on the dash stating that brake fluid when braking. Pedals spongy. What are some possible causes? Just add brake fluid to the reservoir. That could be it, but if your pedal is feeling spongy, the reason why your brake pedal would get spongy is because you have air in the lines. Now, it's possible your fluid level is dropped a bit. If you've got a leak somewhere in the brake line or one of the connections, at the master cylinder or at the brakes or somewhere in the brake line, if air is getting in there and fluid is getting out, you could be losing fluid. So just filling it up is not enough. I mean, you should definitely fill it up. Make sure your reservoir is topped up. But I would also take a look. Maybe take it in somewhere and have them check it out and look for leaks in your brake lines. Because if you're losing fluid, it's got to be going somewhere. It's not going to get consumed. It's leaking out somewhere, and air is getting in, and that sponginess is from having air in the brake lines. So fill it up, but then also take it in and get the brakes checked and get them bled. Maybe just something's loose, something's come loose, and so you want to get everything tightened up, bleed the brakes, get all the air out of the brake lines. And then hopefully your pedals should be back to normal.
Starting to sound like click and clack. It's time for the car, guys. Salmon, bull salmon.
Well, I worked for many years as an engineer.
Bleach your lines there. That's clearly a problem there. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, like I said, I did that for many years as an engineer, and also, even before college, working in auto shop in high school.
I'm not complaining.
So,
we should do half so well as click and clack.
Yeah. Let's see what else we have here. Extrusions are used in HV electric cables as well. Yep, that's true. So the high voltage cables in EVs and hybrids and plug-in hybrids. So these are the big orange cables that you see. Those are the ones carrying the high voltage, high current in your vehicle. It could be anywhere from 400 to 800 volts or more. Those copper cables are often made from extrusions. Let's see, Google Maps. Yeah, referred to Google Maps as one of the sources for chargers. So most EVs, if they have a built-in nav, they will have a point of interest database that has all the charger locations in there, and especially on newer ones, in most cases, when you put in your destination, they will actually look at what is your current state of charge. In some cases, like with Hyundai, for example, Hyundai and Kia, they've taken a whole bunch of factors, and Ford does this as well. They take in a bunch of factors. So they look at your destination, but they also look at the terrain to where your destination is. So if you're driving Petaluma to Tahoe, you're going uphill, and so your range is going to be less. They look at weather information, and they factor all of that in to try to give you a more accurate range estimation. And if you don't have enough charge to get to your destination, they can automatically show you, okay, here are chargers along your destination. Here's some recommended places to stop. Tesla does this as well. Most EV manufacturers are moving in this direction to try to minimize the impact. And what they'll try to do is try to plot out, here's where you should stop so that you can get the quickest charges and get to your final destination in the shortest time. So it may actually end up, you may have more than one stop along the way, but they're doing it in they're timing it in such a way so that you're getting shorter. You're charging when your battery state of charge is at lower state of charge, when it can actually charge faster. As you get up to 80% charge, your battery can't absorb energy as fast, and so instead of having you sit there and wait until you get to 100% charge, it'll tell you, okay, when you get to 75% charge at this station, then continue on your journey and stop again at this station, and your overall trip length will be shorter. Pluto 64 says, will we see a hybrid Miata anytime soon? Yeah, I think we'll see some sort of electrification added to the Miata, probably in the next generation model, which is probably going to be out in, I would say, probably the next 3 years or so, probably by about 2025. Likely a hybrid, and possibly also towards the end of the decade, we'll probably also see a battery electric Miata as well. Let's see. Mike Heiss says, wasn't the carbon that fractured, it was the joint that was the problem. Yep, that's usually where it is trying to join those dissimilar materials. And you'd be surprised, the cost of some of these repairs, even though it might seem like a relatively trivial problem, but sometimes the cost of the repairs is more than the residual value of the car is worth. And an insurance company will just say, we'll total it and not even bother to fix it. Although I think that's probably changing now because used car prices are so high, because there's so little inventory, that insurance companies are probably taking more often than not fixing vehicles instead of totaling them now.
That's good. I've had several vehicles totaled for minor little fender benders, and it's nice if you could fix it.
Yeah.
I agree. Thank you, Sam. Have a wonderful week.
I'll talk to you next week, Leo.
Enjoy your rag top. Take
I
care.
will do that.
Well, hey, how are you today? Leo Laporte here, the tech guy. Time to talk computers, the internet, home theater, digital photography, smartphones, smart watches, serious stuff like cyber warfare, sillier
Low
stuff
warm burner.
like the latest video
6-degree
games.
launch angle.
8888 Ask Leo. Anything you want to talk about. If it's got a chip in it, if it's tech, I like to talk about it. May not be able to help.
I gotta deal with
I'll do
this
my best.
lightweight.
Just remember, you're not just asking me. I am merely the tip of the pyramid here. We've got the Team Tech guy in our chat room at irc.twit.tv and our Discord chat for our Club Twit members. We've got 500,000, 1 million listeners who can call in. So this is like a giant user group where we're all here to help one another. 8888 Ask Leo, the phone number.
Oh, I'm not in the water.
Trevor on the line
Nowhere near the green.
from Burnaby, Canada. Hello, Trevor.
You're listening to Leo Laporte.
Trevor, are you auditioning? You just had to listen to 8 minutes of and I think it's Heather Hammond's voice telling you what satellite channel we're on. That's for of course, all the radio stations up and down the network who are logged in. That's so their engineers don't have to worry that they're missing anything. That's why we don't change that music, by the way, Trevor, so they go, oh, that same junky music we've been hearing for the last 10 years. We must be in a break. I've talked to Professor Laura about changing
Fuck
it.
you, I did not push that.
So what can I do to help you, Trevor?
Alright. I was
Can
hacking
you
my
hear
way
me? I'm
through
talking to the
Sawgrass.
PR40.
Oh, nice.
My Scarlett to my Mac
You're actually not.
is
I'm going to tell you right now, you're not. You're talking through your Mac's microphone. So that's one problem right now.